Look, I've got to confess, there were some people who said to me that maybe I shouldn't come this afternoon. Maybe I should find that my diary was too full this afternoon. I am going to Gladesmore School after this, but there was no way that I couldn't come this afternoon, because this is a moment when you've got to stand by people. And so I wanted to explain why I'm here. I'm here because I went to Downhills. I'm here because I remember a early history lesson in Downhills, where, if I remember rightly, it was explained to us that the school was built in 1882, I think it was. And I'm here for the people who built the school, because they built a community school. I'm here because my father arrived here in 1956, and my mother arrived here, second marriage, a bit later at the end of the 60s, and they settled in Dongola Road, and along with a lot of families in that stretch of Phillip Lane, they decided that Downhills was the right place for their children. And this is an area that's had many ups and downs, and there are stories that aren't great. But there are lots of people that have come out of that school and have done incredibly well. And I can see some of their parents in this room. And I am proud of all of the friends that I've made at Downhills, but so proud of the teachers that inspired us, teachers that are proud of the socialist tradition, that meant that they were committed, actually, often when they could be in very different areas, to serving in what was, clearly an inner city area, and making sure that all of those young people got the very best. And I'm here also proud to stand as part of a previous Labour government that had its ups and its downs, but also to say that I know what a failing school looks like. Because, very sadly, at a point in its history, now, almost well over a decade ago, the school that we are in probably could be described as a school that was struggling. I'm thinking back to the old William Foster, or the tail end of that. And when I think of a school that's failing, it is a school where the parents are running away in droves. That's the start of it. The roll numbers start to really fall. It's a school which is beginning to make the local community edgy. Safety issues keep coming up and other things. And it is a school that is not responding, if you like, to that desire to lift aspiration and see kids from very, very, very working class backgrounds succeed. And so I'm proud to have come from Dongola Road and to be the MP for Tottenham and to have gone to Downhills. I'm also very proud of one of my best friends, Patrick Cozier, who went to Downhills and Langham and is now the head teacher of Highgate Wood. I'm proud of that tradition, and that is why I am here. Because actually, in education, I believe in plurality. I believe in a degree, of course, of autonomy in schools' ability to innovate, but I absolutely believe in community and the kind of shared arrangements that must support each other's schools. It is very, very, very sad that the path that this government has set us on is clearly a path in 5, 6, 7, 8 years' time that I think will lead to a decline in standards. Because I think that in the end, if you haven't got a relationship amongst schools, if you see some schools actually give up their autonomy and their plurality because they're farmed off to quite big organisations that take over whole areas. You actually don't get that mix. You don't get that diversity. I also don't like the instrumentalism that's creeping into schooling. You know, one of the reasons I'm here is because it turns out that Downhill's primary school has had a long, long tradition, when others have gone in different directions, of supporting the arts and music particularly. I left Downhill's to go on to be a cathedral chorister, for God's sake, literally. Such was the musical excellence of that local school, and it has continued those traditions over decades. And I don't want to see that lost, because I happen to believe that there are always a group of young people for whom beginning to experience quality education in the arts and other things starts to rub off as they grow older in other areas of the curriculum. So those traditions are really, really, really important. I'm so proud of parents that have said no. Parents that are seeking to use the law to challenge what is patently unlawful. I stand by a Labour government that did want to see some new innovation and did recognise where schools were failing, whatever others people believe, that there was a moment where a different relationship of autonomy for often the most deprived schools could see this new intervention. But what we're seeing now across the country, with this aim to effectively dismantle the role of the local authority, this aim to ensure that every school becomes an academy school, is we are actually, it feels to me, going back in time to around about 1882, when often schools were set up purely as a result of philanthropy. And because you were, a Carnegie or whatever said, look, here's some money, let's set up a school. Well, surely the invention of the welfare state, the idea that actually, yes, there's a room for that philanthropy, but there's also a room for pooling our resources through taxation and committing to what we believe is important and having a comprehensive and an idea of what is excellence and coming together. Surely, our history tells us that we should not be rolling back that progress to an era where it's down to a few individuals. And if it is down to a few individuals, on what criteria do you benefit certain parents over others? Who gets to decide whether certain parents should be allowed to set up a free school and determine the outcome for their community and their children? Question marks about whether those parents actually have the skills to set up a free school, but we'll come back to that. And whether another group of parents wanting to self-determine in a democratic way with governors and other things the outcome for their children are not allowed to see that self-determination, but a will must be imposed from Whitehall. And look, my history's okay, I think, when I'm not a mastermind. But I do know this. If you were to describe someone as a trot, then surely that trot is the person sitting at his desk, coming up with schemes and plans and imposing it on everyone else, whatever their will. So the irony here is that guy is Michael Gove. How perverse. The world is really turned on its head as we see these descriptors and who is fair and who isn't fair. And so I do believe that as the local MP, it is my duty to support community, parents, teachers, and others. And the drive to standards is a relentless one. And the work continues, of course. And Downhills is, like most schools in areas like this, has its ups, has its downs. Let me say, I was against the amalgamation of the infants and the junior school, which I think perhaps led to some of the issues that the school has had in most recent times. But the point is, we must separate the discussion about what gets best standards and all that we have learned, actually particularly over the last period under a Labour government. What gets good standards? We know what gets good standards. Good head teacher, strong leadership team, committed governors, parents involved. Where you've got many ethnic minorities and parents who don't speak English as a first language, make sure they're in school, community school, sometimes offering English courses and other things to boost standards so you can help with homework. It's about booster classes, interventions, small groups, all of those things leading to that rise in standards. It is not about structure. It is not that horrible, horrible debate that's dogged education in this country for years, that always wants to go back to process and structure and not substance and quality. It's the debate that takes you back to grammar schools or comprehensives. It's the debate that takes you back to grant maintained. And now we see the foisting of academies across the country, masking what really is quality and lifting standards. So all of those things to increase standards. And I tell you what also helps, money.
Yeah, mention, yes.
Because it was totally unacceptable that when I raised this in the House of Commons with the minister, and he described a knowledge of an area like Haringey, that he did not recognise that our young people are 1,500 quid less funded than pupils just next door in Hackney, Islington, Camden, neighbouring boroughs with exactly the same issues. So it does take money and resource as well to help with that. Of course it does, because if you've got extra classroom teachers, if you're able to break up in certain ways, use those funds to list out, of course that's going to make a big difference in an area like this. So in the end, I think what this debate is about, and this discussion, is about the fundamental knowledge that exists in communities like this, that the challenges we face cannot be reduced to one simple solution called academy. We know that it cannot be right. We know it in our bones. And that is why we come together to oppose it. It's a Philistine argument. It's not an educated argument. And it's an argument being foisted on us by a Secretary of State, calling us names, bending the rules, and now we must seek justice in the courts to stand up to it. Thank you very much.